Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the next episode of Living with Hep B. I'm really excited for this one. Today, I'm joined by David Urick, someone who's become a good friend of mine, and it's always awesome to talk to someone who's a little bit closer to your age about something that we're both very passionate about. As you all know, my name is Richard So, Executive Director of SF Hep B Free, and today David is joining us, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. So a little bit about myself. My name is David Urick. I'm 33 years old. I'm living in Ann Arbor, Michigan currently, and I've lived in Michigan for most of my life. What do I do? I am a direct patient care worker at the moment. I've been doing that for about 3 to 4 years. I got the job through an old middle school friend of mine, and it's been an interesting transition. I used to work in culinary arts my entire life, especially before I got into any advocacy work, and it's kind of been a nice change of pace being in the healthcare industry now. And as far as being a Hep B patient, I've been a Hep B patient for most of my life, and it's only until very recently that I've discovered ways to advocate for myself and to learn more about the illness that I live with.
Yeah. We actually ran into David through kind of some advocacy work and another project where he was telling his story. And it's one of those things. I was so interested in speaking to him because so often the classic patient we hear about these days is someone in their 40s and 50s, 60s or older, and who contracted it at birth and never knew about it. And then sometimes it's way later when they develop liver cancer that they find out, or they're lucky and somehow get notified to and find out that they're Hep B positive status through some other health test. And I'm wondering, David, how did you find out that you had chronic Hep B?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it can feel sometimes too as a younger Hep B patient that you're kind of being told a different set of instructions than most of the people that come in with it as an older patient. As far as my diagnosis, I've had this essentially my entire life. My birth mother in South Korea gave it to me when I was soon after, I think, the perinatal fluid was born. Usually they will give infants injections for the Hep B vaccine in most countries, especially South Korea, but unfortunately sometimes it doesn't go through. And I think in my case, that was what was happening. So at the time too, my adoptive parents from America had some basic information on me from South Korea, and they did know that I was Hep B positive at the time. So my diagnosis happened very early on. I wasn't aware of it, of course. So growing up, I wasn't really aware of my Hep B status until my parents decided to take me to a liver specialist and to talk about it for the first time when I was around 13 years old.
Yeah. So, and what was that like? I mean, I can only imagine as a teenager, you're like, wait, what? And this is like this thing I'm gonna have to live with for my whole life with?
Yeah, by the time I went to that liver specialist and talked about this in an official setting, unfortunately, I had already heard the word hepatitis, and I must have subconsciously made an opinion on it as a young person that it was a negative thing, because I do remember asking which hepatitis it was, and just being really afraid when the clinician said, hepatitis B, and I hadn't heard about Hep B specifically to that point, but I had already, kind of thought in my mind that, oh shoot, this is a serious disease and this is something that can be transmitted sexually, even though I really didn't know the connotations of that yet. Mm-hmm. I just knew it was a serious word, and it was a real tough day. I can't remember Much of it, if I try to imagine it visually, but what I can remember is how it made me feel. And hearing a lot of those kind of just facts laid out to you at that age, things like, you know, you're going to be a carrier of this for the rest of your life, most likely. You know, you have to monitor it and, you know, get blood tests semi-annually, and you need to, you know, be up to date with your liver function panel tests to make sure that, you know, you're healthy and that you can live a full healthy life. And, you know, to clinician's credit, she did explain to best of her ability to, you know, to a young person that, you know, it's not the most serious of diseases, that you know, it's not a death sentence, and to not think about it like cancer or something like that. But she did need to still get the point across that it was a serious disease. So, you know, as a 13-year-old, I kind of had a hard time separating, you know, the serious parts of it and the parts that, you know, weren't so bad as I got older and learned more about it. But it's scary to hear things like, you know, you're going to have this for the rest of your life and it can be transmitted to other people. And that was a very, very stressful, traumatic day for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm curious. So, when you said your parents knew about the diagnosis, were they very informed and knowledgeable? Was this the type of thing that's like, okay, we know that about this disease, now's the time to teach our son, and then, but don't worry, we're in it with you, and we're gonna make sure everything's great and fine, and again, it's not gonna mess with your life very much? Or were they a little more in the dark and learning with you?
They were probably somewhere in the middle. I know for sure that they had some base level knowledge of, you know, things to avoid as a parent of someone with Hep B, as far as, you know, making sure if there's blood or anything like that spilled. And, you know, there was a lot of that because I liked to do sports as a kid, and I was falling all over the place. So, you know, that they didn't make it sort of like a you can't do this type situation. And they never pulled me aside and said, you know, you can't. They were super cautious in situations where, you know, I was around other people, because I did play team sports growing up. And I do remember a few incidents where my mom and dad kind of were there on top of me when I had an accident or something, get a Band-Aid on me really quickly. And, you know, I never questioned things like that. It was more just like, you know, they did a really brilliant job, honestly, of kind of showing concern, but not like to a point where I thought I was, you know, something was wrong necessarily.
Gotcha.
And things obviously like avoiding alcohol. My parents sort of have always been, I wouldn't say health nuts, but like we definitely were eating things like lentil soup, really healthy foods that I might not have liked that much as a kid, but now as an adult, I appreciate them so much more for kind of like introducing me to different diets back then. You know, not just let me get a Happy Meal every day if I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never felt like growing up there was like a huge issue with how they like sort of, you know, raised me while still being, you know, responsible as far as keeping me healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool.
but it kind of felt like
mm-hmm.
yeah, until that day at the clinic, I was almost like clueless about my illness for sure.
Yeah, and if I may ask, as you became, you know, a older teenager, and obviously the concern with transmission, and obviously teens get angsty about things and hormones and stuff, did you have a phase where it, like, knowing that you had the disease made you angry or made you really nervous, and then tackling it as someone who begins to have partners? I know it's a potentially sensitive question, so again, share whatever you'd like, but I would be really interested to hear how you manage that. That must be, you know, take a lot of guts.
Yeah, I honestly love being pretty frank about this subject, because I think for young people that they get diagnosed, it's one of the biggest concerns we can have, because, you know, finding partners and the relationship aspect of our lives and intimate relationships is a huge thing, especially at this age. So, you know, that's something that is normal to be concerned about as someone that's diagnosed. I gotta say, the first few years after really being officially diagnosed, were really tough. You know, I'd say like I had a good support system growing up. Normal friendships, you know, birthday parties, you know, as close as you can get to your friends with prepubescent years. Unfortunately, that diagnosis was so heavy for me. And I was, you know, I would consider myself somewhat of an introspective thinker. I'm constantly kind of like evaluating myself and things around me and my relationships. And my take on it back then was that it was too risky of a prospect for me to talk frankly about Hep B with my friends, with any of my peers or teachers. I couldn't, at that time, I couldn't see an opening for a safe space to really be frank about some of the things that were scaring me about having hepatitis B, because I didn't think that close friends of mine would be able to help me, I guess, in a positive way. Like there's some things that you can sometimes like know right away that like maybe I shouldn't share this, or maybe it's not quite the time. Because I kept trying to think back then, like, what is going to happen if I tell my friends about this? I was like, you know, there's many possibilities, but, you know, one of the most likely is that one of them might accidentally share that information with someone else that I didn't want to have known that. And then, you know, rumors spread in school. That's just what happens. And I didn't want to become, you know, the guy that has the STD, or the guy that has whatever, you know, they could have made up stories about how I got it, because I've definitely had that happen multiple times in my life. Assumptions about how you got your disease, usually drug related or sharing needles, and that's never a fun thing to have kind of spread about you. So, you know, not that it would have happened guaranteed, but I was kind of at a point at that point where I wanted to sort of just go inside myself. And I think the following weeks after that initial doctor's appointment, I kind of just kept saying to myself, like, okay, like, you got to get through school. Just get through school. Don't quit. Like, that was pretty much the only goal I had at that point, was to sort of just like, okay, man, like, this is really, really terrible right now, and this is not something that you feel you can talk about. But if you just make it through high school and, you know, give yourself an opportunity for something in the future, maybe this will become something you can deal with later. So that was the kind of the route I took. It was interesting because I was on a winter break when the diagnosis happened, and then when I came back a few weeks later, I definitely could tell that my behavior changed completely as a student, as like a friend. You know, I was kind of, you know, dating is dating, and I was dating the girl for the first time right before that diagnosis hit, and I remember just kind of going back to school and her trying to like communicate with me, and I just like wouldn't talk to her. I don't think I could find the words exactly to even explain what was going on, because she was really concerned. She thought I was, you know, sick or something was going on at home, and I just kind of shut down for her, and I shut down with my friends. You know, I would still go to class. I would be in school, kind of like going through the motions. But like, as far as like forming relationships, or really like pursuing more than just the bare minimum, I kind of just was like, oh, I just got to get through this. And I remember just going to school and keeping my head down a lot. Used to be like kind of a outgoing person as far as like extracurriculars were concerned. And I kind of just said to myself, like, I'm going to just lay as low as possible for these next few years. And, you know, that worked quite a bit. Obviously, like after 8th grade is high school, and that can be even more of a turbulent time in your life. And surprise, you know, I did okay in my freshman year. I went to the public high school in the town I grew up, Ypsilanti, and you know, it was a decent enough environment for a student, but for someone that had a chronic illness on their plate and that wasn't dealing with it in any kind of like measurable way at the time, I was kind of just, you know, believing I didn't have it in the back of my head. I think I would just like, you know, kind of go through each day thinking like, you know, that didn't happen, like that whole saga when I was 13. Like, let's just put that in the in the back burner and just, you know, be a regular student. Obviously, you know, that, that didn't work, but, you know, bless my heart, I tried as hard as I could. So I made it through about a half a semester of ninth grade. You know, I was able to keep up appearances enough to where, you know, I still talked to some friends, and my teachers, you know, they didn't suspect anything because I was, you know, at least getting good enough grades to pass the classes, and I went going to class too. But that all changed about 3 to 4 months into that school year. I remember there was a huge band concert coming up at the time. I remember I was a trumpet player, and I had just gotten braces around that time too. So that was another change in my life that I wasn't a fan of, because I couldn't play trumpet anymore. So I was having a lot of stress about this specific concert. And I remember the night before that concert, all the negative emotions that I had held in for those couple of years since my diagnosis, they all came up to the surface. And I think I had a pretty like honest conversation with myself, kind of saying like, okay, David, like you have the next 4 years in this high school, like you can't keep living and going to school like the way you are, because it's not sustainable. Like, kind of felt like I was like a powder keg ready to explode from stress every time I woke up in the morning. So I was like, this is not sustainable. What are we going to do about this? And at the time, I think I was 14 or something, and the one thing that just kept coming into my mind was like, well, if you just, you know, take a bunch of Tylenol, like you could avoid all this stress. You know, you wouldn't have to wake up at all. So, you know, I think instead of scaring me, that thought sounded like a good idea that night, because of, you know, just everything in me just didn't want to go to school that day. And like kind of just that band concert was essentially like a confirmation that everything was real. Everything that was bothering me was real. And so yeah, that night I went to my parents' pantry, took the Tylenol bottle out of the cabinet, and just took as many as I could. I don't know how many, probably enough for to make yourself sick. But thank God that I didn't take enough to kill me, because I actually, you know, went to sleep that night and didn't tell my parents what I had done. I woke up in the morning ready to go to the concert, and told them that I was feeling sick. And then, you know, they pressured me a little bit more, like, are you just saying you're sick because you don't want to go to this concert, or what's going on here? And that's when I, you know, just bit my lip kind of and just said, hey, Mom, Dad, I've got a real problem here. I took all these pills last night. I'm feeling sick from them. And obviously, you know, they reacted as most parents would. They're worried, they're panicked a bit, and drove me immediately to our local emergency room at St. Joseph Hospital. You know, they tried to pump my stomach at the time, but it had been too late. The pills had already dissolved enough to where that wasn't possible. So, you know, they did what they could to make sure my vitals were okay and that I wasn't going to be negatively affected from that. And, you know, by grace of something, you know, there was no damage at all as far as physically. But yeah, after that day, definitely changed the trajectory of my life, as far as like how I dealt with hepatitis B, how I dealt with my mental health, which is a huge part of living with a chronic illness like this. Is something I love to push and tell other people, is that, you know, like, your mental health is just as important as your liver health and your physical diet when you're dealing with a disease like this, because you can really let fear of the unknown and you know, just fear of the disease itself really hamper you in your life when it doesn't need to do that. You know, hepatitis B is a very manageable and livable disease, but when you don't know that, it can seem like the scariest disease known to man. So yeah, after that suicide incident and attempt, you know, my parents got me introduced with the concept of therapy. they did send me to a psychiatrist and did try multiple SSRIs throughout my youth, which, you know, had varying levels of success. But one of the main things I'm so thankful for from that event is being introduced to the concept of going to a therapist and getting counseling for me, some things that I really needed to talk about with someone in a clinical setting that was trained to do that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Very personal, and I appreciate it. Like, I think you're exactly right. It's one of the things that people don't consider as much, especially I think there's been enough like global awareness of like something like HIV and the stigma that came from that because of the gay community and of course the stigmas with STDs, but like so often it gets lost for any disease, but particularly Hep B. You know, your experience alone says it all, and I think a lot of the really sad thing is a lot of folks go, oh, this isn't, you know, I don't actually have cancer, I don't have HIV, so it's not like it's not right for me to say like that I am mentally anguishing from this, which is totally wrong. And we hear this time and time again from patients, especially across the world, who may not have physicians, or some of the more conservative cultures were talking about a disease, especially one that can be associated with an STD, even though most Hep B is contracted from mother to child at birth. And they sit and do the exact same thing you've talked about. It sits in their mind and they go like, this is such a problem. Like, how do I deal with this? I can't tell anyone, and they bottle it up. And so, I mean, I'm so glad that your parents were supportive of therapy and talking about it. And it sounds like after that, they probably were very supportive as well. And so like, I really appreciate you talking about it, because I think a lot of the people listening to this, we've talked in other episodes just about the sadness when someone loses a parent, or they themselves, or a brother and they themselves are older, or in an American society where, like, one of our David Doan was a nurse, so he had this very much like, okay, I know what to do, I know how this is going to affect me, and that's a completely different case, even though it's the same disease, to someone who is younger or just doesn't know what's going to happen. And so thank you for that. And so once that occurred, and so you went to therapy, and how did things start to turn around?
So it's interesting, like my first visits with therapy kind of opened the door for future therapy. So like I'd say for the first, I mean, me with hepatitis B and coming to terms with it was almost like a good decade journey. You know, I didn't, from that first appointment where I was diagnosed officially to myself, I don't think I spoke about Hep B with anyone until I was like 19 or 20. And my adopted brother being one of those people, and then two close friends from high school. I remember I just kind of had them over. But what I will say is that the therapy appointments I had in the years prior to that, they helped prepare me for that moment. You know, Hep B wasn't something I ever talked about in therapy in my teens. I talked obviously about my suicide attempt and like kind of the feelings that were associated with that, and depression, and, you know, kind of my insecurities with school, things like that. But luckily, the skills I learned, because I did a lot of early cognitive behavioral therapy exercises. I had a lot of workbooks for that. So fortunately, that kind of taught me the skills to kind of think through things that were stressing me out. And as far as talking to someone about Hep B, I had a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of fears that were unfounded, of like, you know, if I told someone, it would, you know, open this Pandora's box of things I'd never be able to take back. And, you know, I just kind of was able to think about that in a more healthy way by the time I was 19. So I was still doing therapy, more based in just like depression and not talking about my specific health ailments. I don't even think any of my therapists knew exactly what was going on as far as that went. But that first conversation I was able to have with my brother and my friends, that was huge. That was a huge moment because, you know, I was really emotional, obviously, but I was able to kind of just answer some questions about like, and just say things out loud about the disease that I'd wanted to say for so long. You know, like, hey, like it's no one really knows about this, but it's, you know, it sucks having it, guys. Like, you know, I'm not gonna die tomorrow or anything, but it's just it's really confused me over these years, and you know, it's something I wish I had more answers to. So after that conversation, I kind of was like, man, like there's other ways to live with this. I don't have to like hold this in and hide this piece of me. You know, I used to not like to think of it as being a part of me. I was like, this is just something I have. Now I kind of consider it something I live with. And it just kind of opened up a door for me thinking like, hey, like talking about this in the right way and in a healthy way with people that you trust is a good thing. This is something that made me feel good after talking about or thinking about Hep B, which is honestly one of the first time that had ever happened to me in my life. Most of the times I ever had a thought about Hep B as it was stressful or something I was, you know, afraid of, but that really gave me some confidence to start some relationships I hadn't formed until that point. So I believe around like 20 or 21, I established a relationship with a hepatologist at the University of Michigan hospital for the first time, because at that point I had still been going to clinics and getting like blood draws every six months to a year, but that was being sent to my primary care physician that knew, you know, just enough about Hep B to know if something was wrong. And you know, most of the years in my teens, I did have high viral load, but my Hep B wasn't super active, so he didn't need to, you know, to do anything besides test me. But once I established that new relationship in my 20s with the hepatologist, kind of got me thinking. Like after my first meeting with her and kind of her talking more about just like, hey, like, what is your diet like? She asked me questions like, you know, do you know what HBeAg positive status means? Do you know what this means? And, you know, that was a really important doctor's appointment for me because it just kind of allowed me to see what managing and like being in control as much as you can of Hep B looks like, and just kind of knowing some of the intricacies of the diet that they recommend, and like, you know, how as a young person you really do have a lot of control over the trajectory of your health with Hep B. It's not to say that, you know, you can 100% make sure you don't get sick from it when you're older, but there are a lot of things you can do as a young person that I didn't know about in my teens to make yourself feel more confident about your disease and make you feel like you're managing it well. And I'd say that those appointments and the therapy especially kind of just brought me into a space where I was comfortable talking about and advocating for myself, which is not, you know, at that time I didn't really understand what that could mean for other avenues of advocacy. But the first step as a Hep B patient, especially like a younger person, I would say, is knowing as much as you can and just caring enough about your situation and yourself to advocate for yourself and ask all the questions that you need to. And don't, you know, it can be really scary, and sometimes the scariest thing to talk about things like this, especially if, you know, you don't have a regular relationship with a doctor like that, or that's not something that you know, are used to doing. But let me tell you, as someone that, you know, came at this from no knowledge base at all and just feeling like I had no idea what the hell I was doing, trust me that it gets easier the more you talk about it, and it gets easier the more you learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. I think lots of people who might watch this would be interested in knowing, you know, understanding that, yes, like getting all that information and making sure that that information is true. You know, there's lots of myths and misconceptions out there, but knowing all those things gives you a sense of peace of mind and almost empowerment, I think, to say, like, I know for sure, like, I'm in control now because I know all the facts. I know how I can change to make my life a little bit better and more preventative in terms of, yeah, things like diet or reducing the amount of alcohol you take, and things like that. I'm wondering, when you finally let your friend and brother know, was it a decent experience? Were they confused? Or was it a little bit negative? Did you face some kind of stigmas? If that's okay to ask.
Sure, sure. My friends were very supportive. I guess the only thing negative out of that experience would be maybe them kind of feeling guilty for being around me when I used to drink alcohol. I would go to parties as 18, 19, 20.
Right. Young person.
Yeah. And against my better judgment, I just wanted to fit in. And
Yeah.
the way I did that was by doing what my peers were doing. And they felt a little bit scared and concerned about like my previous drinking. So that was a kind of the only negative part, but I was able to like let them know that, there's, no damage there's damage that you can do, but, I didn't have any to my liver, and that, I was able to luckily get out of that experience with just more lessons learned than damage done. But other than that, they were, they didn't know which questions to ask necessarily, and they were super confused as to like what it meant. Obviously, they kind of knew what the word hepatitis meant too, and most people usually associate that with hepatitis C. At least the people I grew up with, there were some dramatic television shows that we watched that I remember had like used hepatitis in kind of like a disparaging way to describe someone that was a drug addict.
Right.
So, they kind of had that like say, I believe one of them asked how I got it or when I got it. And then when I explained, I had it pretty much since birth, they were kind of taken aback at that and didn't know that was like a thing. But I'd say I got support, but not directly for the Hep B, more just like, they're my good friends, and obviously my brother being there is, hey man, if you ever need to talk about anything, we're here, and we don't think of you any differently because of this. And that was a huge thing to hear, and that did help. But as far as like talking about the intricacies of some of the situations I experienced growing up, especially in intimate settings, those were just things that I tried to talk to them about, but I just could see that they just really didn't understand what it would be like to go through that.
Right. I think it's something like, as supporters and allies, like, there's only so much you can't say, I know what you mean, right?
Right.
They don't, unless they have something else. But yeah, and so I think for any allies out there listening, I think you want to be, just as David has said, like, supportive. Make sure your friend or person who is infected knows that you're not going to treat them differently. It could take the effort to understand the disease more, and if people are spreading rumors or have misinformation about it, you just correct that. It's not promiscuity, it's not intravenous drug use. In most cases, especially with hepatitis B. And then again, that hey, if you ever want to talk about it, you're feeling down about it, we're here, let's hang out, play some video games. Just know that we're here with you, and that's that's what good friendship and supporting is.
Just know that you'll be helping that person by doing that.
Yeah. And may I ask a little bit about how you went forward with romantic relationships?
Sure, man. So I'd say I was a bit of a I had a bit of a warped view on intimate relationships, especially when I was in my like early teens, because I after I got diagnosed and they explained the sexually transmissible aspect of it, that really scared me. I was, I'd say a bit of a shy person. I was outgoing enough, but not someone that thought I could be competent in talking to women about really personal things. I was nervous enough just getting the nerves up to ask someone out on a date, let alone eventually have a conversation like that. So I created a lot of scenarios in my head. Those first 2 or 3 years, from the ages like 13 to 16, I really had this fear of any kind of intimate relationship or intimate contact with someone. I was like, how is this gonna go? I was like, I can't just like, I mean, it was even to the point where I was like, can I like kiss someone at a party? And like, am I gonna have to like be completely honest with this person beforehand? Like, how is that gonna work? Like,
Yeah.
So I kind of just avoided situations like that for the first 3 years. I did eventually get a job up north working at a restaurant, and kind of was around people I didn't see all the time. So I do remember one of my first core memories as far as like intimate interactions and conversations came with a person I worked with. And I remember we were going to sort of just like, we were starting to get intimate, kissing a little bit. And then I had to stop and just say, hey, like, I have to talk to you about something. And unfortunately, it's not going to go like this for everyone, but and this also could have been the way I chose to kind of explain this to this girl, and the timing of it. But I did pull her aside after that, and told her, hey, like before we do anything else, I need to tell you that I have a illness called hepatitis B, and it can be transmitted sexually. And even though we're planning on using protection, I feel like this is something I needed to tell you. And that's essentially how that first interaction went. And it wasn't traumatic. She didn't hit me or scream or say but she did say, that's okay, that's pretty serious. I just need to take some time and think about that for a second and do a little research on it, which is essentially the best kind of response I could have gotten at age 16.
Yeah. Absolutely.
More mature than most people would have handled it. Yeah. So she was able to I don't know what happened to her after that, but we never talked after that. I'm pretty sure she left the restaurant we were working at soon after, so I didn't get a chance to kind of follow up on whether that was what caused her to leave or not. But that was a pretty hard moment. I was like, shit, man, is this how?
Yeah, this is how it's gonna go
every time. I was like, man, I'm playing on hard mode right now. So I got pretty dejected from that, and I would still hang out at parties and be around people, but man, I don't think I tried as far as intimate interaction with the girl until years later. I did start dating someone seriously for the first time, I believe, when I was around 20 years old, something like that. And luckily I knew her through a friend, so we kind of already gotten to know each other before any kind of talks of dating or things like that came up. So I had somewhat of a base of friendship with her, and my conversation with her went much better. It was still scary, it took me weeks of rehearsing and just I don't know, this might be something that other hep patients have gone through when they're younger, just kind of going through those scenarios of oh man, what is this going to be like? Am I going to get rejected every time? How do I talk about this? But going through therapy like I had, and learning all these skills to sort of talk to myself, and kind of just use cognitive behavioral therapy to if I was ever having intruding thoughts or thoughts that kind of were just more black and white or all or nothing type things, I was able to sort of talk myself out of those things. And sometimes you can kind of have those type of thoughts with the fears of intimate relationships too, as a Hep B patient, kind of saying like, oh man, like if I talk about this, is this person's going to reject me for sure? Like there's no way, like maybe I need to like keep this under wraps for a little while longer and you know, not talk about it or be intimate for a while longer. But luckily I was ready to talk about it with her at the time. I think like maybe a month into our relationship, I sat her down at one of my apartments and just had that same conversation in the same style, you know, try to be not emotionless, but clinical enough to where I'm like not freaking her out.
Right.
Yeah, so it was kind of just like, hey, I have this is what this means for possible sexual interactions with us, and you know, like I need you to talk to your doctor about this, make sure you've been vaccinated. And she took it really well, like, you know, just how I would assume how most interactions would go. You know, sometimes it can be super scary, but most people that if they care about you and that you know them well enough, I think you're gonna get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge moment because we were able to just kind of have some back and forth, and she had some questions like, you know, what are the chances of transmission, like you know, like do you feel sick right now, like how does this affect you, you know, like why do you still drink sometimes, because that was something I was still doing.
Yeah, little moderation is doable.
Yeah,
You can't tell everyone to stop everything. I mean, that's just
exactly.
not realistic.
There is always a healthy middle ground. I'm not saying every situation is like this, but like you said, moderation can be very, very effective, especially when you're being honest, you know, about your health and like, you know, and whatever you're doing in general. As long as you're, you know, completely honest and like you have support around you, I think that, you know, going through things like that is just realistic for most people. It's like, as if you were, you know, they kind of told me when I was 13, like, you know, you, not that you can't drink alcohol, but like you really shouldn't. Like it was you know, and I don't know if it's just youth or, you know, whatever, but I had you know, I wanted to test that as much as I could. So, you know, that's where the experimentation came into play. And, you know, honestly, with drinking, sometimes you can think of it as a Hep B patient and like, oh man, I did this terrible thing. I had a drink and like, am I going to be sick for the rest of my life because of this? Like, no, it's usually not the case. It's, you know, I think it's a healthier approach is to say like, you know, what are my goals for my future with this disease? And like, you know, how, if any, in any way can I like moderate this in a healthy way and like, you know, keep myself in check, but also not, you know, limit myself to the point where life is miserable.
Right. Right.
So there's definitely a middle ground there. And she helped me find that middle ground, because she would, you know, sometimes it can be helpful to have people that will check you on things, like say like, hey, you already had like half of that beer, like you said that was all you're gonna have tonight, like, you know, let's try to stick to that goal. Like, you know, there, and that's not a, it's not a ooh, like I'm breaking the rules thing. It's like a, hey, like there's many ways to manage this. And I think the most important thing for every Hep B patient is to have like a realistic expectation and action plan in your life to, you know, stay healthy. And if you know, obviously I'm not advocating binge drinking, but I am advocating for people to be completely honest with their wants and needs, for, you know, for their social life or whatever it may be. And I think it's okay to sort of have dialogue with yourself, and, you know, to make mistakes and to make changes, because that's how I think that's how I learned as a Hep B patient to advocate for myself eventually, and just also be completely honest in how I share my story, because sometimes perfection can be the enemy of good, especially when we're imagining it in our minds, like how we need to live as a patient. And I think that just those years were so important. You know, I made a lot of mistakes during them, and, you know, things I would change now if I was older, but I think that I learned how to live with this for the rest of my life during those years in my early 20s when I was figuring out intimate relationships still, and kind of like proving to myself that, you know, my life wasn't over at all. That, you know, there was a lot of truth to what the clinician said when she said, you know, Hep B patients live full, healthy lives. You know, I didn't really believe her back then, but sitting where I am now and kind of having the life I do, I completely 100% believe her.
Yeah, I think, David, you touched on so many good points there. The starting out with, I would stress this too, like lots of times you get this, you know, the clinician may say, you know, the ideal is cutting out all alcohol. You know, the ideal is that you are, you know, you're hyper aware of any new sexual partners and you let them know. And I think that makes people go, some of the same things you face, like, oh, I can't drink at all, and then they feel terrible because they either like are like, I can't go out with my friends because I'll be too tempted to drink. I can't do this. I can't do. Oh, if I have a sip, or even if I, you know, take a shot or two because of my friends, especially as a young person, and then they feel like they've, you know, destroyed their life. And I think people and physicians sometimes need to do a better job of this and say, like, you know, we know what real life entails. We know that like asking you to do that, it's not worth like destroying your life for this. There's a middle ground. And same thing with intimacy, just as you said. So first of all, I think it is amazingly responsible and mature for you to have that conversation when you were 16 with that first person. I mean, honestly, I don't know that many people who, even with this knowledge and even being told they need to tell their partner, would do that at such a young age. You're like, am I going to get with this first girl that I like? It's so exciting. So super props to you on that. And then moving on to a later relationship, like doing the exact same thing that you did. And I think for those of you listening, we hear this a lot on the Global Health Forum, folks saying, I have this partner, I discovered I have this disease, I can't bring myself to tell her. Really understanding that talking about the vaccination and being able to prevent you from getting the disease completely, and then the ease of screening and you know, the cost ease, you know, here in the States, vaccination is almost always free. And then even the fact that transmission with use of condom is extremely low, is things that you can, as you said, you kind of be clinical and not emotional, but still as their partner, and saying like, look, here are all the steps. You can pretty much eliminate the chance. You can eliminate the chance of getting this disease, you know, with an extra, you know, the vaccine now is over 1 month, you know,
Yeah.
push the sex or intimacy 1 month, get it vaccinated, you get protected for life, and bam, then there's nothing to worry about. So in a sense, there's it's a little bit fortunate that we can do that with Hep B, that we can make it so that a partner isn't going to ever get sick, and then be protected for life from anywhere else she might have gotten it, like traveling somewhere and getting accidentally infected in a health system in another country that has less of a robust healthcare system. And so I just wanted to be clear for anyone listening out there, when it comes to intimacy with partners, there are steps you can take to totally make it so that this disease is not going to be transmitted to the partner if they get vaccinated and if you use protection. And so, and it sounds like your partner at that time kind of came to that understanding.
Yeah. You know, it can seem like an extra burden sometimes as a patient, but arming yourself with this kind of knowledge and refining it to the point where you can talk about it as if it's, you know, your childhood, your favorite childhood sports team or something like that. Something that is so deeply ingrained in you. And, you know, it's not going to be smooth every time. You know, I've had a lot of these conversations before, and they're all different. You're not going to get the same reaction from every person, but what you can do and what you can make consistent is the way you present this to, and kind of there's an air of like, I don't want to say but it kind of is confidence. It just, in the way I remember, like the last few times I've had this conversation with intimate partners, it's been kind of just like a matter of fact type thing, not like a I don't think there's any point in time where any of those women had concerns about whether I was, not sure about what I was talking about, or if they needed to double check. Obviously, they did double check with the information I told them to search about. But just kind of being matter of fact about the way you talk about it. And it's not going to come that way for everyone the first time, but more you have these conversations and you can rehearse them in the mirror even, that you're going to make that other person's experience much easier for them to like find the truth, which is what Richard said. For everyone, there's ways to mitigate catching this disease completely, and that's important to have that knowledge available to both parties, because it can, a lot of times I think some potential great relationships have probably been missed because of just either lack of communication or something was missing there.
Yeah, and I think fortunately, at least in some parts of America, there's a little more openness to it. We know, and David, I don't know if you knew this, but in China, still in a lot of other foreign countries, there's still quite a bit of discrimination and stigma around it. We've heard cases where engagements and major long-term relationships are broken off because a party finds out about the other party's Hep B status, despite everything we just said.
Yeah.
And that's just a terrible thing. So it's one of those things that the more we talk about it, the more we break stigmas and misconceptions, the better it is for everyone, and the better it is to fight this disease, so that we find all the people who have it and or might have it, screen them and get them into treatment if they need. Which brings me to the next question, which is these days, how do you manage your Hep B?
Oh man, well, it's a daily thing, obviously, and these days I'm taking medication for the Hep B, and it's also luckily it's working. Been on tenofovir for about a year and a half now, and like I mentioned earlier, I've had essentially a very high viral load my entire life, and this is something my doctors have always explained to me, that this is something we just monitor until my 30s, which is a lot of the times when it can start doing some damage to your liver. And that's specifically the reason why I'm on meds now. But for others, that might be something that they never experience. But mostly I'm just living with it, honestly. There's days where I wake up and say, damn, I wish I didn't have this, or damn, wish I didn't have to take this pill again, or dang, I wish I could just go and, go out to this party tonight or this event and not have to worry about the decisions I make. Exactly.
I hear you.
Yeah, I like to jump off ramps with rollerblades and do flips. So I figure, man, like gotta get some extreme activity somehow. But as far as my thoughts on it, it's just it feels like it's just living with it. I'm not actively fighting or actively worrying about where this is going to go. A medication isn't an end all to be all. There's I still have to pay attention to what I do, and it's not just I can take the pill and forget about everything else. So these last few years of living with Hep B have really been me learning more of like the lesser talked about ways to really maintain a good, healthy relationship with the liver. I've always been someone that's, like to enjoy fried food every now and then. I like a cheeseburger. What can I say? And these are all things that sometimes, can do some damage if you have, a diet that consists only of those things. But I think recently I've been trying to figure out and live with Hep B in a way where I can still enjoy foods that aren't necessarily the healthiest for your liver, while still maintaining a baseline for some of the other foods I choose to eat, some of the things I choose to drink. Vegetables, obviously, fruits are things that are super healthy, but not necessarily the easiest things to eat. Recommended servings of per day. So a lot of my days these days are more of like the specific management of balancing enjoyment in life with keeping, you know, a clear picture of like wanting to keep my liver healthy, and, you know, make sure that this medication, you know, I'm not taking it for nothing, and kind of just facilitating, just like living with a healthy liver. It can be different when you're younger and kind of thinking like, oh man, like it's either I get sick from cirrhosis or liver cancer and a transplant, or I'm fine. And there's definitely, you know, it's just living with an illness. Any illness is a spectrum, and there's, you know, there's ways to live healthily with it. There's ways to kind of, you know, ignore doctor's advice and, you know, eat whatever you want. I used to be that way. There was for sure times in my life where I wasn't concerned about what I was putting in my body, but these
Yeah,
days,
you've been too hard on yourself, dude. I mean, as a youngster, like, I mean, that's, we all go through it, man. Oh,
you
like, oh, should I eat KFC 2 times a week, or, you know, am I gonna? And it's not even just like fast food. It's like you live in Ann Arbor or such. Like,
I'll
oh, a new
steak out all
restaurant
day,
opened
man.
up. You know, like, you know, a brand new speakeasy opened up. Oh man,
Yeah,
I'm gonna like hit that. I mean, you were in culinary. I mean, especially if someone who is into the culinary world, like, and anything new opens up, and like a new place that has like 7 different gourmet versions of mac and cheese. Oh, let me go there and try every single one. So, and for folks who are listening out there, in terms of management, just as David said, often, which is awesome, it is just, let's see you every 6 months instead of that annual physical that regular, or I mean, non-Hep B patient folks might have. And then they'll do some tests. David has mentioned a high viral load. And at some point, many physicians will say, hey, we just want to be preventative with this. We know, just as David said, that the high viral load can start causing liver damage. And so we're going to start you on this pill a day. And David can tell you, for the vast majority, there are no major side effects for the pill. And if you listen to our very first episode with Alan of Living with Hep B, for him, it's like an afterthought. He takes that pill a day, just like he's like, these days, Alan's in his 60s now. You know, I'm taking my aspirin, I'm taking, you know, something like collagen or vitamin C because I don't eat enough fruit. And he just adds that one pill in, and he barely realizes it. And again, just like David, he goes, you know, I probably drink a little bit less than the average person because I'm thinking about my liver. But again, it doesn't affect his life in any way that seems out of the norm. And that's one of the really important things to know. This isn't something that has to be top of mind, and in a negative way, for your normal life.
yeah. I think there's always a healthy balance with things like this. You know, not punishing yourself to an extent. Like there is a such thing as punishing yourself for health, and
Mhm.
I think there's just always a healthy balance to be found, and everyone's balance is different, but it's good to have those conversations with yourself.
David, I wanted to ask, as we come closer to a close here, what are some things that you would want to tell folks listening, or things that you would wish you had known when you were younger, anything like that?
um, I'd say if you're diagnosed at a young age, with any disease, let alone Hep B, I think the first instinct can be to hide it and to run away, kind of just like bury it, like I did when I was really young. And if you can find a way to talk about this, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be with another person at first. It could be just a journal. But getting your fears and your stresses out, in some kind of measurable way is one of the most helpful things you can do for yourself as a Hep B patient. Because to deny that this disease isn't stressful at all is just, you know, to lie to yourself. But to also say it's the worst thing in the world is also over exaggerating the truth a bit. So we're in a fortunate position as patients to have a lot of control over the effect that at least the mental aspects of this disease can really put on ourselves sometimes. You know, it can be easy to just, keep worrying day by day and kind of just pushing through. And, some days you'll be fine, but, some days it'll come to the surface. And I think that if you're struggling with living with this illness in any way, I think you owe it to yourself to get that out either in spoken word or on paper, and to really, think hard about how you want to live with this. And as a Hep B patient, 33 years old, I just want to tell you, anyone that's listening that's thinking that, they're not going to be able to do this or not going to be able to live a normal life with it, it's hard work sometimes, but this is all doable. I was convinced when I was 13, 14, 15, 16 that I was done. I was not going to have any type of life, no relationships, no intimate relationships, no career goals, no successes, no drive for life anymore. And sometimes it can, if you let it overwhelm you, it can feel like this disease is not manageable, but trust me, it is very manageable. And the resources that are out there are sometimes hard as a young person to find, unfortunately. There's not, you see Breast Cancer Awareness Month, there's AIDS is obviously one of the most publicized illnesses to come out in the last 30 years. And sometimes it can feel like we're a bit invisible as a community, but that's when, people like Richard or myself or you, any step towards advocating for yourself, is a step. Like, it doesn't mean you need to get up and talk in front of people. It can just mean, writing a journal entry and, pushing through tomorrow, and, going towards your goals and not giving up, and understanding that, like, this is a day-to-day thing. As of now, there's no cure for this. So for us patients, it's, important to be, be active in our advocacy for the condition that we live with. Because I think if you advocate for yourself, you're just going to naturally advocate for other things in your life, and that's never a bad thing.
And David, that brings us great to the next point, which is I'd love to hear, and I think other folks who may be inspired by your story, how you got the courage to start being a kind of public advocate for Hep B.
Absolutely. I love telling this story. So around the time of maybe like a month or two after I had gotten my liver biopsy, and I had gotten a liver biopsy before taking medication around the age of 30. And, I was thinking pretty seriously about my illness after that. And I was like, wow, this is the first time where I've, this is really something that's affected me majorly. I need to think about this in a different way, and I need to get some other people's perspective on this, on living with this, because, that's my life now. And I found a YouTube video. I believe it was through Facebook. I don't know what I might have just typed hepatitis B in the search bar, but I found this woman. I believe her name might have been Wendy, but she did a personal video through the Hepatitis B Foundation's Just Be storytelling campaign. That was 3-4 minute video, and it was set up over some dramatic music. And I looked at the thumbnail and I said, okay, this looks interesting. This looks like something I need to listen to right now. So I clicked on her story, and she went through explaining like when she was diagnosed and the fears she had after she was diagnosed. And a lot of that video hit pretty hard with me. I remember she is questioning herself whether she could have kids, or what happened if she did have kids, and if she would make her children sick, or if she would be around for her whole life to see her kids grow up. And all these things were causing her a lot of inner turmoil and guilt, just for thinking about having a family. And that's something that really hit home with me, and it made me really emotional. And after I watched that video, I sat in front of my computer and just stared at the screen for probably 5 or 10 minutes and said, that was powerful. I don't normally get affected by videos like that, but I was visibly like crying and just couldn't get myself together. So the next day I watched it again, and I liked a few more of the videos on the Hep B Foundation's page, because I was like, this is really powerful stuff that you guys are doing, and kind of just forgot about it for the next few days. And the week after, I got a message through Facebook Messenger from the Hep B Foundation, and they were kind of just asking me, hey, like, we noticed that you watched a couple of our videos and you were, liking them. Can we ask you if you're a patient, or like why you're interested in Hep B in general? And so I told them my story, and they immediately asked me if making a video like the one I had just watched was something I'd be interested in. And I was like, wow, this feels pretty serendipitous right now. And I don't think it took me more than like 5 seconds to say, yeah, sign me up, and what do you need from me? So a month later, I was on a flight out to Berkeley, California, with, I believe, 12 other people from all around the world, from ages 23 to, I believe, like mid 70s. And these were all people that came to make a video like the one that I saw, that had changed my kind of perspective on what you could do as a Hep B patient. So, we all gathered together, and, this is the first time I had ever met anyone else that had Hep B in person. Obviously I'd watched a few videos, but the experience of meeting, people my age, people that weren't my age, from all walks of life, wonderful people, and just hearing their stories was huge life-changing experience for me. And it got me into a mindset of, when I was younger, I used to think, like, when I heard the word like advocate, or like a volunteer, I kind of thought like this person that dedicates like every single waking moment of their life to, like, being Superman or Captain Planet and like saving the world, and having to kind of be like a superhero. I was kind of thinking like that kind of thing was unobtainable, or not like doable by just a normal person like me. But after that experience, meeting those other people that made the videos, and after we had all made our own videos during that weekend long workshop, it just was a really healthy and good reminder that, like, advocacy can come in so many different forms. And what it really is just spreading the message of, the thing or the movement that you care about, and just sharing that with other people, in whatever way you can. So yeah, after that weekend was done, I had my own video that was up on the Just Be Storytelling workshop website and the Hep B Foundation's website, and shared through social media. And I was just thinking to myself, as that release, I talked about some really heavy stuff in the video, but I thought to myself, if I can do for one person what this woman's video did for me that day, then, I like where this is headed, and I like spending my time doing things like this, if that's the possible result from it. So ever since that workshop, I've been, I'd say, an advocate for more than just myself. I think I've understood that it can be hard to talk about hard things that you've gone through in front of people, but I think the beautiful part about it is that when other people hear it, it can show them that they're not alone. And that sometimes is an answer that it's really hard to, and a belief that's really hard to instill in yourself when you have an illness that is, largely invisible through most of the world, and just not talked about as much as it should be. So, doing podcasts like this, just speaking in your regular life to people that you trust about, things about the illness that they may not know. learning more to yourself, having a relationship with your doctor, and learning more about the technical aspects of the disease. All these things are things that can make you feel more empowered as a patient. And if you're ever at the point where you want to share those things that you've learned, or possibly share your story or perspective so that someone else could hear it and feel less alone, that there are many avenues available to do that. And I think that the advocacy world is just such a beautiful place to be and be involved in, because you just get to meet other people that are so passionate about whatever it is that they're representing. And in the Hep B world, it's been such a pleasure and such an honor to meet some of these people, such as you, Richard, or anyone that's taking time out of their lives to get Hep B more exposure, and to get Hep B patients the knowledge and the help they need. I think that's just one of the most beautiful things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my job is sometimes to summarize, but you've got it down pat. I think I just wanted to give everyone who is listening some of those resources now. Of course, the Hep B Foundation, you can look them up online. Just type in Hep B Foundation into Google or your search engine. Their storytelling page, if you look up Just B, it's technically hashtag Just B and Hep B Foundation. They have, I think now, something like 50 stories from all sorts of folks from all around the world, different ages, different ethnicities, in many languages. So they've come up with quite a big archive of folks to listen to. They're also great to share with friends and family. If you have a hard time telling your own story, you can share these resources. There's information about Hep B as well, the disease condition. Our website, SF Hep B Free, also has that. We have our YouTube channel where this is showing up. I will put all those links down below in the description. And then the last thing is relatively newer, but awesome. There's a new community forum called, I believe it's hepbcommunity.org. Hundreds of posts there, folks asking the exact questions that David asked when he was young. I just got diagnosed. What should I do? My viral level is suddenly getting higher and my doctor wants me to go on medication. What should I be worried about? And there's not only other patients there, there's physicians, experts, there's public health people there, and there's just support there. If you feel alone in your own community, and of course, and you feel like you can't talk to anyone immediately close to you, this is a place, a safe space online where you can see and talk to other real people about this stuff. As we draw to a close here, David, I'm wondering, just COVID's been crazy. What are you looking forward to? We're coming out of winter. What fun things? I think you said something about doing flips for skating. That sounds awesome. I'm just curious what you're looking forward to doing.
More just have every activity during the pandemic. It was like I had to go through a few questions like, oh, is this safe? How safe is this? And what's my risk management tolerance for even seeing my parents? But yeah, like this year is just the year, I think, of doing a lot of things in public and around other people that I didn't feel comfortable doing the last couple of years. So I'm going to be outside a lot. I'm probably going to be much tanner in 4 or 5 months. You won't recognize me, but it'll be a great time just being able to experience a lot of things I love to do around other people, like skateboarding and rollerblading and just walking around in nature.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I think I'm going to try to do more of that too. Definitely getting outside and in big groups, hopefully, like doing stuff, some outdoor sports would be great. But so this will wrap this up. Thank you so much, David. You can also watch David's original Just Be video too. And that is actually how I found David too, because I was going through and, I'm 35 and I had always wondered, are there other Hep B patient folks like me? I don't have Hep B, but as someone working in this field, many of my peers were all older and had relatives, fathers and mothers who had this. And I saw his story and I was like, oh my God, I need to talk to this person. And that's how we ended up talking and getting together for this video. And I'll be watching his progress in advocacy and doing stuff and hope to work with him more. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of Living with Hep B. Again, all the information on the resources and links will be down below in the description. You can always, we'd love to ask for you to support us. You can do that by sharing your story, talking to your friends, donating to any of the organizations, Hep B Foundation, us at sfhepbfree.org, and any of your local community organizations that are fighting this. Anything else you would like to add, David?
I would like to say, like, all the work that you've been doing with SF Hep B Free is just inspirational to me, and I'll definitely be picking your brain as the years go on for some ideas for advocacy. And just, it's just an honor being on this podcast with you, and just I'm so glad that you're getting stuff like this out to people that need to hear it.
Yeah. And the last thing, I don't know if I had told you that I wanted you to say is, we know that we hope the viewership for this YouTube channel will pick up from this. And we really didn't know until in the past, I'd say 4 months, we've gotten 2 separate emails from folks, actually both outside of America, who said, hey, I just wanted to email you. I got a chance to see some of these Living with Hep B videos. It's really, really cool to see people with Hep B talking about it. I just wanted to tell you that. And I was like, what, like, wow, like we're making a difference here, even if it's just for those 2 people's lives. So that makes me feel great. It makes me feel like what we're doing matters. I know you feel the same, David. So have a great rest of the day. Looking forward to more episodes. We like to bring on a variety of people on, so stay tuned. We'll probably bring on more advocates, maybe some physicians for some interviews too, to get that perspective. And until then, we'll see you next time. Have a good time.
Thanks, everybody.